Therefore, I have to do my invoices manually. I have to follow up manually. And I was just like super annoyed. And my colleague at TIA, I was telling him about it. And he basically said, yeah, why don't we automate it? And I was like, yeah, feel free, go ahead. So what he built in a weekend, so he came back on Monday and he basically told me, hey, look, I used Lovable, Supabase and Make to basically automate your invoicing.
Welcome back to Follow the Gradient. Every founder knows that cash is king, but not every founder knows how to control it or how to scale finance and operations without slowing everything else down. That's where our guest of today, Fabienne Doerig, comes in. As a former CFO and COO with more than 15 years of experience in scaling VC-backed startups from pre-seed to Series D, she today advises both founders and funds. In this episode, we go deep into the operational layer of scaling, how to build a real-time cash cockpit, when to automate and when not to, and what actually makes the difference between chaos and clarity in a scale-up's back office. Sometimes the stories from deep in the trenches are the ones truly inspiring. Enjoy!
Most founders know how to scale sales. Very few know how to really scale operations and finance, the side of the business where cash is actually controlled. So today we're going deep into that side with someone who has led finance and operations at WeFox, advises scale-ups and PE-backed companies, and now helps them automate the back office with AI. So Fabienne, great to have you here. When you look at companies starting their AI journey in finance or operations, what's the fastest path from curiosity to real impact? Maybe you can share one metric you personally improved, like faster month end to close or better cash forecasting, but you are here the expert and can share your insight with us.
Yeah, how do you drive real impact? In my experience, it's always when the pain point is the highest. So pain drives impact. I think that's a little bit also in our lives. So usually it's before an exit, or there is a business model change, or you do buy and build and you really have to make a change in the back office organization. Then you have the largest impact. And it also doesn't really start with implementing the fanciest AI tool. It usually starts with achieving clarity. Who has which role, what is done where, and just to make an example, within accounting, we saved 200K in about 3 months for a startup or a scale-up, which had about around 20 million in top line. And we just did two things. We automated procure to pay. It was super painful, different tools. Employees were super unhappy because they had to approve invoices in one tool. Then they had to book travel in another tool. So we just switched from a variety of tools to one, and we changed the accounting partner. So accounting was outsourced, which I believe is the right way to go for a smaller scale-up and startup, but it really depends on what the outsourcing partner does. At that point in time, before, they looked at every single invoice, so to say. And now they are basically only responsible for the month-end close and for tax. So they're not involved in accounts payable, accounts receivables anymore, because that's what we are automating. I would say that was one of the biggest impact, which for me was basically what you do when you start the project. But I was a bit surprised by the positive reaction that we got by doing something relatively simple and not really AI, but before you actually start implementing AI.
And on that point, when we talk about AI in the back office, we don't really mean robots replacing CFOs. We mean software that reads invoices, matches payments, draft reports, all the boring, repetitive work that eats your finance team's time. When you say you automate the back office with AI, what are other real use cases where automation actually worked, and what parts still need a human in the loop then?
I mean, if we look in the future, and I was at the Waves last week where they presented how agents will be working together in the future and how you actually don't need a human in the loop anymore. Personally, I believe it takes some time until we get there, because within organizations, there's always a current situation. Current systems, current data situation, and teams that work in a certain way. And I think it will get some time until we get there. But even when we're there needs to be a human in the loop, because finance is accuracy. And who actually then monitors accuracy? And we were kind of joking, since I'm a former auditor, whether there is another agent, kind of an auditor monitoring the other agents. And personally, it's super interesting to follow what tech can already do. But in my personal experience, what is actually being done within finance teams is completely different. So there is still a human in the loop in all the processes. And what we automate is basically the processes until they go into accounting or into reporting. So, for example, procure to pay, order to cash, and also partially record to report, but that not so much. Personally, I moved a little bit away from that because I don't think there is an amazing ERP out there which does everything automated or driven by AI yet. So very keen to see what's, but not yet. So personally, what we do is, first of all, we always change, or many times we change the accounting partner because we work with someone who uses the same technologies that we use. So actually the accounting system, be it Date or Abacus or whatsoever, can be connected to the record to report process or to, procure to pay, order to cash processes. And another example, what we've automated is invoicing, billing. It could be the case that there in some super small startups or scale-ups that there is not yet a tool. And then you can actually, with today's AI and automation tools, you can easily automate the billing cycle or the invoicing, which is also something that I'm personally using for my own invoices. Or we automated the email inbox of finance. So many times you have an inbox, which is called accounting at. And then, everything gets there. Customers that have questions to their invoices that you need to pay, etc. And then basically you can create a scenario in Make that does the triaging and either books it automatically or forwards it to whoever is responsible. So it's really actually small things that move the needle today, not huge automation or AI projects. So at least that's what the experience is that we are having, and also it's change. It's a new way of working, and it's better to start in small steps.
The speed is incredible. I mean, you were saying you were joking about having an agent being the auditor for the auditor, but I've seen in other places, let's say in content management, where I actually have seen that live, where you have an agent that is then training other agents and putting that together like a human being would be doing. And so it's going to be very interesting in the months and years to come. In an earlier episode, Sorry,
and let's be honest, finance is 0 to 1, especially in accounting. Either it's correct or not. And I believe there is lots and lots of potential. It's maybe a little bit a boring kind of topic, the accounting rules and guidelines. So not so many automation experts or AI experts are there yet. But I believe there is significant change that is about to happen. And that's why we focus on the processes before, and we focus on transparency and unit economics, because that's what actually investors need, and also founders need to steer their business. That's what we focus on.
And you say it's a boring one, but often the boring topics are the ones where you can make whole businesses. I mean, we are a prime example with Yokoi. We automated the expense management part. And so basically you're also shouting a request for startups for whoever wants to dive into that. I think there's a lot of potential in this area because it's more dry and more complicated. In an earlier episode, we had Simon Ruschenberg on the show, who also recommended that we invite you, which we happily did. And in our conversation with Simon, she said, clean data is like your GPS. If it's messy, you just scale mistakes faster. Both of you have seen companies drown in tools before they even define what they need to measure. And you said it yourself, first you need to have clarity before you actually dive into the automation and really decide what you want to do. When you join a scale up to make AI actually useful, what do your first 90 days look like? Walk us through it, maybe step by step, what you map, what KPIs you define, what automations you start with, and what controls you set so nothing breaks.
Yes, to me, automation requires structure and clarity. And that's what you have to get to first. And that's, in my opinion, this is where you should start. And this is what I do. It's not it takes some time before you get to the exciting tasks of actually building an agent or actually automating a process in an automation tool and actually see it work. So what we usually do is we start with understanding which KPIs are important. What do you report? To whom? And are there gaps? And with gaps, I mean, you would like to report something, but you don't really have the data. And that usually takes some time until you're aligned with all the stakeholders. And I think there the art is less is more, in my opinion. I know that from my own mistakes I made. I always wanted to know everything, to report on everything, and to have everything super granular, but you have to start somewhere. And it's better to start with a few KPIs that are the most important to the business. Once we've defined that, then we look into the strategy and we define which capabilities does the business require to actually achieve its strategy, which then hopefully are also going to be meaning achieving the key results. And what is a capability map? It's basically outlining the major processes along the value chain and saying, okay, what do I need to do along these processes? Account management, if we talk about sales, upselling, etc. And then we basically list that on a so-called capability map, and we allocate which systems are used today within which capabilities. Sometimes it's none. Then it means we put a flag there, probably automation potential. And sometimes it's basically Excels, could also put a flag there, automation potential. So we identify where is automation potential without yet actually checking whether there is value that can be created or not. And then we define where are the data sources. Who is responsible for the invoicing address? Does sales have to make a tick mark that this is the address the invoice gets sent to? Or is basically finance then running after everyone to check who does he or they have to send the invoice to? And once we have that, so basically we know which capabilities are required, in which systems do they have to be, or should they be, or are they, depending on what the status is, and which data do we want to control and where. Then we basically check, okay, who's accountable for all this? Because one of my key learnings personally is if you don't have end-to-end accountability, it doesn't really work. You always end up in the silos and everyone automates something, but without really the perspective what it actually means at the end. For example, in finance, it's super important that you have the invoicing address, which is usually in HubSpot, or which is in the CRM or wherever it might lie. And also for billing, you need to make sure that there is a product catalog and that you basically sell what's in that catalog. Otherwise, reporting becomes difficult, invoicing becomes difficult, things like that. And then we have basically, then we have outlined, okay, what do we have where and what do we need? And then we basically check, okay, where do we have potential to automate? So we put little flags on the capability map on where we could automate. And where do we have to fix something? Either we need to check that the system is correctly implemented, or maybe there is one step missing, or maybe the data is in two places, and then we basically have to do this homework. It's not always the most exciting thing because clean up data is not really something that
no one likes that.
Anyone likes to be doing. But yeah, I agree. It's one of the key parts because otherwise you will never get to a reporting. Mm-hmm. And once you've done your homework, then you can start automating. And I always recommend to start something super small and where you can immediately see an impact in terms of hours saved, more customers won, more leads won, something like that.
Now, let's get even more practical. Cash is the one thing every founder cares about, and it touches everything. Cash is king: CRM, billing, payroll, and the bank. If I now run a 20 to 50 million business and have 12 weeks and 100,000 euros to spend, what's the minimum viable cash cockpit you would build? Like, which inputs would you connect? What outputs do you actually want to see weekly, monthly, daily? And how can you move that cockpit faster to deployment using automations?
Yes, I would build a 13-week cash forecast that updates daily. based on the data that you have in the system. And then I would also define, okay, what's my KPI? Why am I building this? Do I need to collect cash faster, or do I need to improve forecasting accuracy? Because usually this is something that the investors want to see. Do I need to shorten runway? What is actually my goal here? But let's assume we want to improve forecasting accuracy. Then I would build basically subboards, which are showing the collections, so the money that we've collected, and also what are we waiting on. And then I will build a payments calendar, which are the upcoming payments, what are we about to spend, and some kind of operations or controlling board. So let's say, what's the cash that we have in the bank today? What were the recent changes? What were risks? For example, large upcoming payments, but customers that should be paying are usually delayed or have really long payment terms. And then also actions. So one action could be, hey, if this customer doesn't pay, we can pay one chunk of an invoice, hopefully not the rent, but it could be, and definitely not the salaries, but could be something else. And then also, what impact does it have on the, and what I would connect via an integration platform as a service. I would connect the bank accounts. That's probably the most difficult ones, because those APIs are not so easily to get to, but there are experts that can help you. I would connect the billing system, the CRM, payroll for the most important cash out, and part of the accounts payable, or also past expenses, where we can actually, with an LLM, learn what future expenses are going to happen. But it really depends on the business. Some businesses are super easy to forecast, others are more difficult. And then you can build on top of it, you can build different automations. You could automate the invoicing. In a 20 to 50 million business, usually you already have this. You have a system where you have invoicing already automated. You could automate dunning, including the chasing. That's super easy to automate. So usually the system tells you which ones are overdue. And then you can, with a very simple scenario in Make or any other automation tool, you can actually tell the tool on when and which triggers are to be pulled when, to send out the emails automatically, or to give you a Slack notice if they haven't reacted for 2 weeks or twice or something like that. And then you can also do payment batches based on working capital management. Usually payments are still in the accounting system. And if you know when your big cash outs are, you can program payment batches. So basically, to make a very concrete example, we had a client who always invoiced whenever he had time. So things were going well, he had a lot of cash, and then he invoiced when he had time. His back office was run by his wife, and she was kind of annoyed by it because she knew that there were a lot of open invoices. So the first step, what we did is we actually changed the process. We moved the accountability from him as the owner to her as being responsible for the back office. And then we started to automate. Super simple. All we were doing is we were basically scraping the open accounts or the open invoices list. And then we basically sent her a trigger on what she has to pay when. And the investor was like, how the hell did you manage to collect so much cash in 2 weeks? And it was super simple. And now we are working on automating the processes, which means 2 things. A, really correctly implement the system. They have a billing tool, but it's not correctly used. And then connecting it to the accounting tool. And then she does not have to run after him anymore to actually get the approvals on when to invoice what. And he can still feel good because we don't invoice the last 10% because he wants to do a quality check. And then once he's done that quality check, he can click in the system, hey, it's done. And then the invoice goes out automatically. So that's what we are working towards, to mention a concrete example.
And you and your team at TIA, you even built an invoicing and cash tool instead of buying one off the shelf. So can you walk us through there? What is the tech stack of that tool in terms of vibe coding platforms like Lovable, Supabase, Make, and why did you choose to build it on your own? And what would you say was the result?
Basically, it came from a pain point that I personally had. So I'm using an accounting system, which is very commonly known in Switzerland for small businesses, but you can only connect one bank account. However, I invoice in euro and in Swiss francs, and therefore I have to do my invoices manually. I have to follow up manually. And I was just like super annoyed. And my colleague, Atia, I was telling him about it. And he basically said, yeah, why don't you automate it? And I was like, yeah, feel free, go ahead. So what he built in a weekend, so he came back on Monday and he basically told me, hey, look, I used Lovable, Supabase and Make to basically automate your invoicing. So Supabase is the single source of truth. It's basically a database. So I have a Google Sheet, enter the customer data and what has to be invoiced. Then via Make, there is a scenario build who basically, when I say this you can invoice, it triggers the data into Supabase and it triggers an invoice in PDF and it sends it out automatically and I don't have to worry about it anymore. We could also automate dunning. I still do it manually because we just didn't have time to connect it, but it's done. It doesn't look pretty, but I was amazed how quickly this has been built. And I think we all know that the economy drives from small and medium-sized businesses. And it's pretty amazing what these automation agencies out there, what they actually build. Yeah, once you have a pain point and find the right people to tackle it, it really makes your life easier.
And in general now these days, and you also mentioned automation agencies, what would you say is the best way to go and under what circumstances? Like buy an off-the-shelf tool and configure it, build it yourself, or maybe kind of build it yourself, but together with experts from an automation agency?
I think it depends. I think every business is somehow different. So A, the business model is different, and B, not everyone has the same exact capabilities or system to achieve this business model. And to me, it just requires clarity. And I would always look at, okay, which capabilities are required to actually achieve the goals? Because I get crazy that everyone is buying softwares, AI tools, starts to automate here and there and everywhere. And I'm always like, okay, hold on, wait. I mean, we all have so many tools and a lot of times people are thinking in silos based on the rules. And I think it needs someone within the company, whether it's someone junior or whether it's someone within the COO organization or CFO who kind of has an overview. What are we doing in which system and which data is in which tool and who is actually accountable for it. And I really believe in copy with pride. So whenever I see an automation, which I think I can use this, I would call this person and say, hey, can I buy it from you? And I think this is the way to go in terms of automations today. It's not so hard it's hard to find them sometimes. And I also believe in not changing tools that have been working. For example, we work with a company that is in the manufacturing adjacent service industry, and they have a tool which is very specific to them. I didn't know it before, but it's a kind of an ERP. And I have lots and lots of respect. I would never change the tool because then their people have to work differently. And from my own experience, trying to implement SAP and not understanding what it actually means for an accountant that sits in a different country, I would not change that tool, but you can actually improve these tools, how they are used, and you can build an integration platform as a service on top that orchestrates automation. I think that's the way to go. And maybe in the future it's different. You can buy everything, but currently I think everything is moving so fast that you should optimize what you have and then buy what you see works for others. So copy with pride, and then only build what is core to your own product.
And I have one follow-up question on a point you mentioned earlier. You said whenever you see a good automation, right, or something that works, you try to buy it. So 2 questions. One, where do you actually see good tools or automations, right? Like, because for instance, on LinkedIn, there is so much noise out there. Where do you actually see these things? And question number 2 is, what were really strong use cases, specific use cases you were seeing which worked out? Because again, I think there is a lot of noise out there. And I sometimes kind of have the feeling that there is these almost clickbait posts on LinkedIn where people present like, I have my entire GTM org automated and alone I'm doing 5 million ARR within 1 month. And I'm kind of questioning, does that really work out? So what are good signals for use cases you have seen and where?
I agree with you. There is lots and lots out there, and people that are really adding values in, let's say, SMEs, for example, or in scale-ups that are usually not yet on LinkedIn so much. So for me, the best indication is when someone tells me about it who has actually been a customer, who knows that, hey, my processes have been made easier, or my people have had less work. They could go home earlier. And then I look into it. Okay, I ask them, okay, who has done it? And maybe I'm a little bit in a special position. So I work with Make, which is a product of Celonis. And I'm a little bit around their partner network. And there I see like super young guys that have no teams, small teams, bigger teams. And I talk to their customers. And they tell me that they've automated the offering, for example, or that they basically using large language models now, and they feel content that data privacy is not an issue. And then I'm just contacting the people that they worked with. So I agree with you. It's not that easy to find it. It sounds so easy, and every use case is a little bit different because we have such a diverse landscape also in systems. So I don't really have a good type, just that when you see someone that you feel, hey, this person is in the right environment, just ask them. There are very few automation agencies in Switzerland yet, but some of them are really doing an amazing job. And usually they are fully booked. So I know a lot of people that work as freelancers that when I ask like, how do you get to your customers? It's all word of mouth. So they are basically then telling their friends on who they made good experiences with.
And do you see that all in Switzerland or also in other places in Europe where they're fully booked? Or is there a specific country where there might be more talent that can actually help the startup and scale-ups in this area?
No, I think I see it everywhere. Good people always have work. So I think it's not really only related to automation and AI. But the space that I know best is Germany and Switzerland. I heard that there are also a lot of good people in the Eastern countries currently exploring that. So I don't really have an opinion yet about that. But to make one example, in Germany, I was at an event. I met this guy. He was barely 20, and he works for an entrepreneur who is almost 65. And this entrepreneur had a pain point, and he found him through some common relative or friends. And now he's basically automating processes there. He built an offered agent, for example. He introduced LLMs, did a lot of training within the company. And, this is his job. He doesn't know anything else. And he's not employed. He works as a freelancer because he wants to be fully remote, freedom. But I find this kind of fascinating. And the entrepreneur just tells him, hey, this is my pain point, solve it. And then he works with the team and solves it somehow. And the approach he comes up with, I'm sometimes like, okay, wouldn't have thought of that. So that's also a little bit how we work. So we basically identify, okay, these are the automation pain points. So one of our clients, he said, hey, look, my offering, until I've written an offering, takes too long. There's a lot of data gathering. I need to download the documents from the platforms, and then I need to look up the material prices. So we were like, okay, then let's build an automation agent to make it easier for you. And now that's what we are currently working on. Or to my surprise, I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm always surprised that still many companies want their invoice in a letter. So it gets mailed by the post office. And everywhere I come in the SME industry, there is someone that has to send these invoices out. And then I heard from actually also someone in the automation industry that she was surprised that there is an API at the German post office that you can actually automate the emailing of invoices. So I was like, oh, maybe that's also the case in Switzerland. So I basically asked her, hey, how did you do this? And then now we are doing it in Switzerland and it's supposed to be working. We haven't finished it yet, but let's see. So this is somehow how we come up with a solution. I think it's about trying and it's about being creative and it's about sharing is caring.
So much potential for new startups. So
Yeah.
like it's really exciting. Now I want to shift a little bit because tech only sticks if culture allows it. What kind of culture in a scale up makes automation succeed? And also, who should lead this transformation? Is it CFO, the COO, the CEO, or someone else?
I can share an example of what worked and what didn't work in one of my prior roles. Not sure if I have an answer on the culture. I think the culture is super individual by each and every company. And it's really driven by role modeling of the founders or the people that are at the top. And I think it does start at the top, but it's a new way of working and it needs to come bottom up. When I was at one of my prior scale-ups, we implemented SAP. And for me as a finance person, it was super difficult to understand in the beginning why the people in the countries, the accountants, weren't as excited as I was. They didn't really care that I wanted to switch to IFRS or that we all of a sudden needed to consolidate. And I had a limited understanding in the beginning until I realized, hey, for them, it's a completely new way of working. They have to switch from local GAAP to IFRS, which they probably have never worked with before. And I really underestimated what that actually requires in terms of change management, that you can't be successful if you drive something from the top, even though if it's for an IPO or a potential IPO and everyone is behind, super difficult. And then I changed role. I moved closer to operations and I wanted to implement an automation tool, or we wanted to automate processes. And I was like, okay, now I have to do it differently. So what I did is I bought the tool. I said to my colleagues in management, I'm going to pay for it and I'm going to implement it with your resources. And the agreement is it will always be EBITDA positive. So either it saves cost or basically it generates more top line because we were facing cost pressure. So basically the agreement was we go use case shopping. If we find someone that wants to automate something, we help them. The business case gets approved by the respective owner. And once it was successful and it overachieved the KPIs, they could automate whatever they wanted. So we went use case shopping, and the use cases, of course, were not at all what I expected. We started somewhere in Italy where it was basically someone was downloading and uploading documents, super simple use case, but they could go home 1 hour earlier because that task didn't need to be done anymore. Or we started in HR, in places where I didn't think that I should have, or I wanted to start because I didn't really see how this creates incremental or super great value. But then I was like, okay, now we are doing it different. So let's start with these use cases. And today, actually, the person that started in HR didn't have anything to do with automation before. He's now responsible for automating processes in a quoted company. And I believe this is the change that I think you should try to achieve. And this is the thing that I'm most proud of, that it allowed people not to be afraid of their job, but to see the potential and to actually now have other jobs due to being given a chance or being given the freedom to just automate a process that we didn't know what the outcome was. We just saw that there is value to be generated and then we just tried it. Of course, not everything worked out, but I think that's part of the journey. So for me, it's really also being humble, starting it yourself. I also tried to do scenarios on my own. I'm really not the best persons. They are really not state of the art or anything like that. But to share that also, that it's a core competency that everyone can learn if you basically stick to it, if you have fun with it, and to remain humble of what you can and cannot do, and to showcase it in the company, in staff events or wherever, in competitions or whatever you can come up with.
I think that is so important. We're already at almost at the end, but we want to kind of end this discussion also with a rapid fire question. So just a few questions with that we like change from Christian to me about certain topics, and I'll go first. So you've led through hypergrowth and investor pressure, and our slogan is really how to scale a business from Europe while staying sane, and the staying sane part is quite important to us. What keeps you sane when everything speeds up in the scale-up world, also in the current job?
First of all, the privilege to live in Switzerland among the mountains and the lakes, and I think we really have a good and amazing work-life balance surrounding. So there are some challenges we don't face as heavily as in other countries. And second of all, I love being in the middle between entrepreneurship and this fast technical development and AI. And it's generally the people that are younger. So I don't feel old most of the time, but I feel young because I feel it's super exciting when you talk to someone that is not even 30 yet, founded his second company, manages to have already 30 people in within 2 years, and actually helps SMEs to really drive automation or AI adoption. And to work with those people, I just find it a privilege. I love to work with entrepreneurs and not having so much politics anymore.
Second question, if a founder could do just one thing next week to make their company more AI ready, what should it be?
One thing, okay, I think you have to start with yourself. So I would say, spend some money internally, make a pitch event for 3 to 5 projects, spark joy, and then also the winner gets a reward and also gets support, money-wise, or finding an automation agency or whomever to support him or her. If it's not there, to actually start with the first automation within the company. So I think, just try something new. And also, if it doesn't work out the first time, it's also okay.
Third question, what's the single most common finance mistake you see founders make during growth?
Spending way too much money on the back office. Hiring senior people who don't have a startup or a growth mindset. And then everything gets overcomplicated early on in the process. I have also been there, tried to make everything 100,000% bulletproof the first time, which is not necessary.
Last question. What's one automation or report every founder should personally review every week, no matter how big the company gets?
So that actually would mean that you already have automated something. So then, yes, I'm from finance, so you definitely should measure the impact it has on your margin. So that's the only thing I can say. And if you haven't yet started with automation, I think it can be measured anyhow. How many more leads did you generate, or how much faster did you close the books, for example? And I think it's also motivating to see, hey, we are actually making progress.
We learned a ton, and I'm sure there are many, many listeners out there who now think, how do I get on the waiting list of Fabienne or her colleagues in this space? So how can people reach out to you and learn more about your work, your insights, and also maybe team up with you?
They can reach out to me via LinkedIn. I'm excited to help. One of my first bosses in a corporate environment once told me, copy with pride, and I really believe in that. So I'm happy to share the experiences we have, or to also forward the names I know who basically can help you within Switzerland or Germany or any other country that they are experts in, that I always keen to learn from others.
Thank you so much for being on our show, Fabienne, and see you soon.
Of course. Thank you very much for having me. See you soon.
And now we would love to hear from you. How did you like it? What should we improve? Do you have any suggestions, ideas, or dream podcast guests? Please let us know.
Thank you, and see you again next week.